Koviak. We are in the home stretch, Clinton, of our spring spotlight series Tonight, we are talking about the Purdue Boilermakers and the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. We will have, after this one, 3 more live shows, I believe, doing these. We got 2 more 2-packs, a California special, USC and UCLA coming up later this week, and then next week, Wisconsin and Washington with the W's to finish us off. And then we'll have a solo day doing about 20 minutes on Notre Dame. It'll be the same length as all the other episodes. You just don't have to see our faces for quite as long if you're watching on the YouTube, for better or worse. Clinton, sir, how are you tonight?
I'm doing great. I'm a little tired after that damn hailstorm that came through here last night.
No, we did not get that at all.
It was nasty. Like, the boys, definitely Elliot has been alive, and we've had hail before, but not a hailstorm. That was absurd. It sounded like people were dropping meteors onto the roof of my house. Insane.
Well, they were dropping meteors in Ohio last week.
I know, in Cleveland. They found them. Could you imagine? We were talking about this. If you'd just been standing there and one of those tiny little rocks hit you in your head, game over.
Yeah, you'd die.
You know how fortunate that nobody got hit by one?
Dude, you can drop a penny off the Empire State Building,
Yeah.
and I'm pretty sure it would reach enough terminal velocity to go through the skull of a human being.
Yeah,
if it
just
landed
imagine
on
if
them.
you just had your hand sitting there and that meteor, little shard came in and hit your hand. Your hand would have just been eviscerated.
I feel like that would hit you with enough velocity, it would rip your entire arm off your body.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on where it's sitting. But anyways, yeah, we had a pretty good hailstorm last night. That's what happens when it goes to be 86 and sets a record high in Columbus.
Dude, that's
for
fucking
March.
insane. That's just crazy.
That is nuts. And now we're 41 for a high today. My body is so fucking tired of going back and forth with this different weather. I don't know what to do. I'm ready. I wasn't ready for 86. Let me tell you that. We had the Easter egg hunt in the neighborhood yesterday.
Sweating bullets.
I'm ready for like 70. Let my body temperature adjust.
I'm not even ready for
buddy,
that.
We were 4 degrees from 90.
No, man. I need
In fucking March.
It's been 100 in Vegas this week. That's crazy.
It's insane.
I need like a solid 3.5 months of like upper 50s to low 60s. That would be
I
good
want
for my
like
soul.
like a quarter zip because I'm full dad mode, all quarter zip style, even though I love hoodies. But I want like a quarter zip in short weather before I go into just cutoffs and shorts.
See, I'm full hoodie and shorts. That's my sweet spot.
I love that. That's fall and that's a good spring when we get it. Mr. Ryan, how are you?
Good. I'm tired. What else is new? I still haven't killed anyone.
How's your hunger strike going?
It's pretty good. I think I got far enough in now that I'm not like actively thinking about food at all times a day. The weekend, like Saturday, Sunday is actually a little bit easier than I thought it would be because I don't wake up at 5 in the morning, which is nice. And so I'll get up at like 8 and then do like morning chores, like go get coffee and stuff and work out. And then by the time like all that shit is done, it's noon and it's time to eat lunch. And I'm like, oh, well, now I'm just on schedule anyway. So it's been good. I think we spontaneously went out for dinner Friday night because it was 70 degrees. And Sam's like, do you want to go eat on a patio somewhere? I'm like, yeah, sure. That's fine. But it was good. I didn't I ate her French fries too, but that's the only bad thing that I've done the last week. I've been good otherwise.
I did not eat wings again on day 2 trip to Roosters. I had a Bob's bacon cheeseburger.
Oh, yeah, that's better. You didn't.
But you know what I did do?
You didn't condemn
No, I got mozzarella bites as an appetizer, and my belly was not feeling great Saturday morning, dude.
Did you condemn the plumbing beneath your house?
Yeah, it wasn't feeling good. It wasn't quite diarrhea, but it was it was some soft stool, let me tell you, folks. That I think I'm getting a little more intolerant to greasy food. Pizza's not too bad. I guess I should say like fried greasy food, and I also just indulged in, I don't drink pop a ton, so I indulged in a couple Dr. Peppers when I was there, and that probably also didn't help my case. But the old gut's all back to normal now, so
I think I fully kicked soda.
you know, I like it every once in a while to sprinkle it in. Probably a little more than I do like a beer. Maybe one. I probably don't even have a beer a month, to be honest with you. But I was like, you know what? I'm in here enjoying March Madness. I don't really want to drink beer right now, so I'm just going to pop a couple Dr. Peppers. I really only wanted one, and then she brought me another one, and I drank that over the course of the next 2 hours. So it took me 2 hours to drink one. So I thought that was better than just plummeting through that one, and then she bringing me a third. But I also drank like 7 glasses of water. I could tell you I was pissing
There
like
you
a
go.
Russian racehorse, man.
Why does it have to be Russian?
It's like rushing. It's rushing to the bathroom, not rush
Oh.
in.
Oh, okay.
Rushing to the finish line.
I think you said a Russian racehorse. I'm
No,
like, buddy, I don't think they have racehorses in Russia. I think it's just all like cavalry stuff.
they just eat them.
Maybe I don't know. I'm not familiar with Russian
If
cuisine.
we have
So
any
I'm,
Russian listeners, please let us know.
dude, there was at one point in time where like every third episode was downloaded by someone in like either St. Petersburg or Moscow, and I don't know if it was a bot or what, but there's someone out there.
Do we still have the person for like Germany or whatever?
I haven't checked in a while.
Okay. This is
Maybe.
Well, props to y'all if you're listening to us internationally. We were the number 91st ranked college football podcast last year. Help us crack top 75 this year.
Fuck yeah, that's
That would be
cool.
cool.
Goals for the year. Clinton, you are going to start us off with the Purdue Boilermakers tonight. Good job on your ABCs there. Year one, Barry Odom last year. They still went 2-10, which I didn't feel like they were necessarily that bad. Like 2024 just felt hopeless last year. Felt like they played a little bit better maybe than the record indicated. The schedule draw was not great, but what are you looking at for the Boilermakers in the spring as they go into year two of Barry Odom?
Well, I remember me saying this multiple times last year, telling you, Ryan, this year's Purdue team would definitely beat last year's Purdue team. Even though they went 2-10, I do feel confident that last year's team would have beaten the team from the year before. In diving in this team, man, I checked out an article by Sam King, so props to him. Purdue has 53 newcomers on the team after they went 2-10 last year. So, if you play like garbage, bring in some new stuff and see if you can find some upgrades somewhere. So, in reading just real quick summarization of part of those articles, Odom's just really confident, happy with what he brought in. Of course, he'd have to be. You wouldn't say that I don't feel really great about the guys we brought in. That wouldn't pan out very well. But he really thinks they found some upgrades at key positions. Now, for those of you who follow Purdue, you're probably already aware of this. For those of you who don't, what can Browne do for you? Purdue does have one key piece returning for them, and that's Ryan Browne at quarterback. Odom has continued faith in him. They only signed one quarterback this year, and that was incoming freshman Cornberry. They did not chase a single quarterback in the portal, Ryan. So that shows a lot of faith for me. Day one of season for 2026 in Browne. Statistically, though, last year, Browne left Boiler fans with a little something to be desired when the season ended. He threw for 2,153 yards, 9 TDs, but a whopping 10 interceptions. You never want that interception to be higher than your touchdown count, folks. That is not good. That resulted in a QBR of 55.1, which was good for 84th in the country. So not the worst, but certainly not in the upper tier that you'd want him to be. He did also contribute 4 touchdowns on the ground, and we'll get to that when I get to the running back room later. He does give some contributions in the ground game for them, which was really important. I believe we saw that when you and I went to watch them play Oregon, right? Wasn't that Browne?
Yes.
It was a quarterback for them.
He was.
He had some mobility, even though he was under constant duress while in the backfield. They made a really big effort to try to upgrade around Browne. Their offensive line, not great last year. They made additions in Micah Banulos, Nuka Mafi, Makai Sena, Boaz Stanley, Jatavius Shivers. Now, the key 2 pieces to speak on here would be Nuka Mafi. He started all 12 games for Oklahoma State last year. Now, guys, I know they were freaking horrible, god-awful football team, but you are at least bringing in a 12-game starter onto a team who's obviously got plenty of room for you to be able to play this year. Then we also look at Boaz Stanley. He brings some versatility into West Lafayette. He started, again, all 12 games in 2024 for the Troy Trojans, and then he spent 5 of those at center and 7 at guard. There's the versatility, guys. Last year at South Carolina, he made 9 starts, making 8 at center and 1 at right guard. So he has the ability that he's played in the Sun Belt and the SEC. Another place in which Purdue could use some upgrades to be able to help Ryan Browne is at wide receiver. So we have Asad Wasim, Xavier Townsend, or Xavier Townsend, if he pronounces it like our friend, Ricky Sampson, BC Owens, Jalen Hornsby. They're going to certainly need some of these weapons and additions to step up because Ryan last year, the Boiler offensive line finished 17th in the Big Ten in pass blocking.
Oof.
That is horrific. Now, we have the starter in Ryan Browne. What happens if Ryan Browne goes down or you need him to, if he's out in an extended period of time, short period of time? There's a 4-player logjam behind Browne. Bennett Meredith, Evans Chuba, and Garrett Odom all return. Singleton is gone. Left Purdue after he joined last year. The Boilermakers signed also the aforementioned Corn Berry in its 2026 high school class. There's one glaring issue, Ryan, with all these players is that none of them really have playing experience, and the only one that does is Meredith. And he started one game in 2023, so 3 years ago, in which he alternated series with Browne. No other quarterback on this roster has taken as much as a kneel down in a victory formation. They will certainly, not that Purdue does a whole lot of victory formation. That's a slight dig. Sorry, guys. They will certainly need improved quarterback play from Browne in 2026 if the Boilers want to go bowling in 26. Ryan, any thoughts on the Purdue quarterback room and them pretty much, barring a collapse, handing the starting job to Ryan Browne this year?
Well, you want to talk about collapse. I remember distinctly watching this team at the beginning of the year thinking that they were going to take a, like, when I say big step forward, I mean, it's all relative, right? Like, this isn't, we're saying Purdue's going from 1-11 to they're making a bowl game, but making a step forward to being competitive based on how they started the season, Clinton. Ryan Browne last year had 4 games over 250 passing yards. All of those came in the first 5 games of the season. During that stretch, he had 7 touchdown passes and 5 interceptions. Not fantastic, but a step forward again. And again, 3 of those interceptions came against USC. His last 7 games of the season, Clinton, only 2 touchdown passes, 5 interceptions. He had no games in which he threw for 250 passing yards. In fact, I believe it was, I'm doing math in my head right here. I'm just going to fucking count it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of their last 7 games. He didn't even hit 140 passing yards. It was a strange season offensively for the Boilermakers last year, man. Like, coming out, like, watching them, and I get that the Notre Dame defense early in the season was a hot mess, and they couldn't, what was it, like the Nick Saban saying, goat shit through a tin horn. That was their secondary the first couple weeks of the season, but he looked good in that game. He looked good against USC. I get the first 2 games were Ball State and SIU, but then, he had a pretty good game against Illinois, too, in a losing effort, and from the Minnesota game onward, it just was not good. So I mean, you never go into a season planning on it. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, he got hurt against Northwestern, didn't he? Because I think that's when Malachi Singleton might have come in and played a fair amount.
I think so. And then there was another game. Remember the fluky ending where they had, like, he passed it to himself essentially, and because it got tipped up in the air. They had some interesting scenarios last year.
Yeah, so Singleton played. He had 20 attempts against Northwestern. Browne started that game. I think that was the injury game. And then he was the primary quarterback against Washington in week 13, I want to say that was. So, I mean, you go into a season, and, I mean, you can make this case with just about any team in the country. If your starter gets hurt, you are in trouble because you don't practice screwed, and if your quarterback is hurt, you're screwed. Especially in this day and age, if you have a really good backup quarterback, you're only going to have him for 1 season because next season he's either starting or he's going someone else to start. So that's, I mean, concerning on the one hand. I don't put a ton of stock into it, but you need this guy to be better for you in 2026 if your offense is going to take the next step.
And you talk about their offense. One thing that we felt like they could lean on a couple of years ago when we started this podcast was the running game. And it wasn't so hot last year. And this year, coming into 2026, it's going to be a pretty new look running back room. It's going to look much different than 2025, including the position coach, as former running back coach Lamar Conrad was fired, and Cornell Ford has now moved over from wide receivers coach to running back coach. Looking at their stats last year, they averaged 126.4 yards per game and 4 yards per carry, led by Purdue legend Devin Mockobee, 125 carries, 521 yards, 4 TDs, 4.2 yards per carry. Now, with Mockobee mentioned here, they lose Mockobee and Malachi Thomas to eligibility. while Jerron Thomas and Jaheim Merriweather went into the portal. The only returning running back that contributed carries for Purdue last year is Antonio Harris. He was second on the team in attempts and in yards. He finished with 69 attempts, 305 yards, 2 TDs. Then we mentioned earlier when we talked about Browne, he also contributed 66 carries for 206 yards, 4 TDs. And then we look at this, out with the old, in with the new. Enter Jerrick Gibson from Texas, fame Ijejboi, Minnesota, and Travis Terrell Jr. from the Jackson State, I believe, Jaguars. Looking at the stats for the new running backs that will be joining this backfield for 2026, we have Gibson with 37 carries, 152 yards, 1 TD, 4.1 yards per carry last year. Ijejboi stands out here as he was a complimentary back to Darius Taylor. He was the second leading rusher behind him for Minnesota. 97 carries, 441 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a 4.5 YPA. And then we look at Terrell Jr., 102 carries, 607 yards, 5 TDs, and 6 yards per carry. So a very nice yards per carry average there for him, but also playing with a little bit lesser competition. It will not matter, Ryan, which running back starts for them because the O-line has to be better. They finished 17th in run blocking as well, just in front of the Maryland Terrapins, and we know how bad Maryland runs the ball. It's about as bad as when Clinton has too much Roosters in his system. In addition to the aforementioned names, Purdue does return starting left tackle Joey Tanana, along with a part-time starter in Ethan Trent last year, and they welcome in new offensive line coach Zach Crabtree, who is hopeful to get something out of the returning offensive lineman in addition to the transfer portals. Ryan, your thoughts on the running back room?
Just shout out to Devin Mockobee, all-time Boiler great. Way to stay committed to that program, man.
Absolutely, man. In a time when commitment is, I don't know, is about as good as Bonnie Blue to her boyfriend.
Jesus
it's
Christ.
pretty low. She's pregnant now, I heard, unless that's all for a scheme.
Well, you know what, man? I wouldn't know.
No, and you try to have sex with 1,000 dudes in a day. That's probably going to happen at some point. Speaking of which, that's not really. That was a poor segue. Anyway,
we're moving on.
I am going to make some improvement here. We're going to talk about secondary improvement, and that is secondary improvement for the Purdue Boilermakers. We watch Purdue in a common theme, unfortunately, over the past couple of years. They've had a big play problem, and I'm not talking about good big plays, bad big plays. Opponents had 26 passing plays of 30-plus yards last year on them and 16 passing plays of 40 yards or more. Those totals ranked, Ryan, 133rd and 134th in college football, respectively.
Don't think that's good, bud.
If you don't play good enough defense, you sure as hell ain't going to stop anybody when you're giving up that big of plays. The Boilermakers only had 4 interceptions last year, and one of those was by a defensive end. Boiler opponents averaged 14.4 yards per completion, which led to them grading out as the worst pass coverage team in the Big Ten in 2025, which is well behind the next lowest team, the team you're going to talk about, the Rutgers Scarlet Knights, according to Pro Football Focus. They also allowed a 65% completion percentage to opposing quarterbacks. By comparison, Purdue and Ryan Browne last year only completed 58.8% of their passes. Purdue's secondary, though, they're going to feature 12 new faces, including 8 transfers, and then there's a caveat to that, checking their actual website. There was only 7 listed, so only 7 enrolled currently. Correct us if we're wrong, Purdue fans. But we're going to see transfers such as John Slaughter, which is more of a known name. He's coming over from Colorado. Mr. Clark, Justin Denson Jr., Tavari Hampton, Jaden Mangum, and if you guys recognize that name, he's been in the Big Ten for a little while, D. Newsom, and then Don Sanders, or Saunders, depending on how you pronounce that. Jaden Mangum, we mentioned, he's been in the Big Ten for a while. He started out with the Michigan State Spartans in 2022. Was there in 2023, and then he went to Michigan for 24-25, in which he really didn't do much. But if we go back in the time machine to 2023, he was an all Big Ten honorable mention, in which he accounted for 53 tackles, 4 interceptions, and 3 passes defended for the Michigan State Spartans that year. So pretty big year for him. We'll see. He's a well-traveled man. He hasn't quite encompassed the whole entire Big Ten map. If you think of the commercial, hasn't quite hit out west yet. Stayed pretty central. Then another key name here is Mr. Clark. He's coming off an all-conference USA season in 2025, tallying 63 tackles, 13 pass breakups, 6.5 tackles for loss, and 3 interceptions. He almost had as many interceptions by himself last year as the entire Purdue defense. The key thing here, the secondary has to be better because they face a pretty good batch of quarterbacks this year. You're going to get Nico. You're going to get C.J. Carr. You're going to get Damon Williams Jr. You're going to get Rocco Becht, who is a veteran, experienced player. You're going to get Malik Washington, and you're going to get Hoover at Indiana. They have to have an improvement in the pass D this year if they're going to find a way to get themselves bowling.
Yeah, man, they were second worst, I believe, in P4 and fourth worst in all of FBS and yards per play allowed last year. It was not a good defense. And that puts your offense in a tough spot too, right? Like, you know, you want to play complementary football. If your offense is not staying on the field, not picking up third downs, tires out your defense. But when your defense comes back on the field and they are giving up 4-play, 70-yard touchdown drives, that puts your offense in a hole one. But then they don't get enough time to regroup, try to reassess what went wrong on the last drive, pull up the iPads, look at some film on the sideline, look at some pictures on the sideline. There just has to be a better team next year, man. And I think we'll dig into this a little bit in the summer. This isn't the time nor the place for it, but they're finally kind of off this hellacious schedule run through the Big Ten they've been on the last couple of years. You know, you get in-state games against Notre Dame and Indiana. That does not help. But you're missing Oregon. You're missing Ohio State. You're missing Michigan. There's still some good teams on the schedule, but it's not quite as insurmountable as last year was, though they do get 11 P4 games this year, which is not great considering they've not beaten a P4 team the last 2 seasons. Clint, do you know who the last P4 team they beat was?
Purdue?
Yeah.
It was Rutgers, wasn't it?
No, it was Indiana at the end of the 2023 season.
That's right. We went over that.
That's still the most remarkable thing is the last P4 team that Purdue has, shitty-ass Purdue, the last 2 years has beaten is Indiana, who is now a national champion. Crazy.
Nuts.
We'll see if they get one this year.
Yeah, well, you know.
I have faith.
Crazier things have happened. Iowa did beat Florida last night.
Yeah, my bracket's fucked.
And now the Farmageddon Bowl, it happens in basketball.
That is going to be
football.
Fun. That will be fun to watch.
That'll be awesome.
But that's all for Purdue. Will be an interesting team to follow this year. We'll see if they can take a step forward in year 2 under Barry Odom. Now, Clinton, you kind of set me up for the transition there talking about Rutgers because you want to talk about defensive disaster classes. That was the Rutgers Scarlet Knights in 2026 or 2025 heading into 2026. And we will talk about that in a minute, Glenn. I have a lot that I'm looking for on this defense, but what I am looking at first and foremost for Rutgers in spring ball is they need a new quarterback. Ethan Kaliakmanis off to the NFL after a much better second season in Piscataway. The question I have is Dylan Lonergan the answer, or will they stay internal with AJ Sarras as the starter? That's going to be an interesting quarterback battle. Over 2 years at Rutgers, Ethan Kaliakmanis developed into a pretty good quarterback. Last season alone, 62.2% completion rate. He had 3,100 yards, 20 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Granted, he was completely ineffective against Oregon and Ohio State, but we are grading on a bit of a curve here. We're not getting carried away saying he was the best quarterback in the Big Ten by any stretch of the imagination, but he was a good, effective player for Rutgers, which is not something that they'd had in a little bit of the quarterback position. But he's gone. He's off to the NFL, and they bring in former Boston College and Bama quarterback Dylan Lonergan. His counting stats last season, Clinton, if you were just kind of box score watching, looking at this in a vacuum, he was fine overall, but I don't think that really tells the whole picture of his season. He started out exceptionally well, and granted, it was against Fordham and then against a Michigan State defense that was also terrible last year. In those 2 games, he was 60 for 79. He threw for 658 yards, 8 touchdowns, and no interceptions. It was a red-hot start to the season, and I think it had some people feeling pretty optimistic about Boston College heading into ACC play. But if you take those 2 games out, you just look at the rest of the season, games 3 through 12. He was 130 for 205, still 63%, not too bad. But he only threw for 1,367 yards. That's 6.7 yards per attempt. And he only threw 4 more touchdown passes the rest of the season versus 5 interceptions. He got benched for 3 games midseason. He came back in relief against SMU. I think Grayson James, who was the quarterback who came in against Notre Dame and then started the next 2 games after that. I think he got hurt, and then Lonergan played pretty well. Maybe not well, but he played fine the rest of the game against SMU and Georgia Tech, even though they lost both of those games. And then he sustained a finger injury in their finale against Syracuse, and Grayson James came back in. So a bit of an up and down first year as a starting quarterback. I think more downs than ups, which is perfectly normal, but it was his 3rd year of college football, right? We're not talking about a redshirt freshman or anything of that nature. But he did redshirt his first year at Alabama, so he has 2 years left to make an impact. And Kirk Shiraka, offensive coordinator and quarterback coach, did a pretty good job developing Kaliakmanis over 2 years. Can he have a similar impact on Lonergan? Or again, is it going to be 2025 backup AJ Sarras, who gets the nod heading into the season? He only attempted 9 passes last year. He was 4 of 7 against Norfolk State. He did have 2 touchdown passes in that game, but then he only attempted 2 passes the rest of the season, Clinton. That was their, I believe, week 3 game on the 13th of September. So their backup quarterback has very little game experience. So it will be interesting to see if they stay internal, the guy that they know who's been in their system but doesn't have any game experience, or if they go with the guy who has a bit of a pedigree. Again, insert quote about, if you're still talking about his high school recruiting ranking now in his 4th year of college football, he's probably not that good, but we have seen Dylan Lonergan have success at the P4 level. We've also seen him look very bad at the P4 level, so I'm curious to see where this shakes out for Rutgers.
And speaking of Sarras, he was no small fish himself. He was a pretty high rated per 24/7 Sports, a 3-star with an 89 grade coming out of high school. So he's got something to him too. If I read correctly, he came in the 2024 class. So it could be a battle. Kaliakmanis was a stable hand there for 2 years. As we've seen with transfers now, it tends to be second year's the answer, right? Look at Bo Nix and look at how much more these guys have time with them. So maybe now that Lonergan has had a second chance, if he gets the start, he gets his second year starting experience in, he can kind of turn it around a little bit. But again, those guys were mentioned. Those were their second year with the same team, and he is now on another new team.
Pretty similar athletic profile for these guys too, right? They're all, and this including Kaliakmanis, he's a little bit taller, but both Lonergan and Sarras listed at 6'2". Not sure on Sarras' running ability. Lonergan, I don't think we really saw a lot of that from him. Grayson James was Boston College's more running quarterback threat last year. But these questions kind of go hand in hand. The second thing I'm looking out for is if it's Lonergan, if it's Sarras, who is helping out wide? Because part of the reason that Kaliakmanis was so successful last year was they low-key had a really good receiver room with KJ Duff, Ian Strong, and DT Sheffield. That trio, Clinton, last season combined for 156 catches, 2,432 yards, and 17 touchdowns. By volume, that was 76% of Rutgers' receiving yards, 65% of their catches, and 77% of their touchdowns. Why is that important? Because only KJ Duff is back. Ian Strong transfers to Cal. DT Sheffield is off to the NFL. The good news is KJ Duff is awesome. He is 6'6", 225 pounds. He is a monster of a human being. He has incredible contested catch ability, good speed. He had 60 catches for 1,084 yards and 7 touchdowns last year. I think you can make an argument that he is among the best returning receivers in the country, not just in the conference. I think you can also make an argument that part of the reason he was effective last year was because Rutgers could spread the ball out with Ian Strong and DT Sheffield. Who is going to be the guy that replaces them as they are no longer on this roster? And I do want to say that I am going to contradict myself because I think Ian Strong was hurt in the Purdue game last year. And in that game, KJ Duff had 6 catches for 241 yards. So maybe he doesn't need a running mate. Maybe they're just going to throw him the ball 850 times this year, which would be awesome to watch. But things I'm kind of looking out for, their leading non-Duff returning wide receiver or tight end is Ben Black, who replaced Ian Strong in the lineup in that Purdue game. He had only 8 catches for 119 yards last year, which, again, they didn't really need him for most of the season. In that Purdue game, though, when Strong was out, he had 4 catches for 56 yards. So he did step up pretty well there. They have some young guys to keep an eye on. Redshirt freshman Vernon Allen III and Jordan Houston are 2 names to look for in that slot spot vacated by Sheffield. And Black appears primed to slide into Ian Strong's vacated Z receiver position. I think that KJ Duff is good enough to just kind of be a one-man show out there. I think it would be beneficial for Rutgers to have someone step up next to him to take a little bit of the load off, especially if they are hoping to come close to what was the 26th ranked pass offense last year. They do have Antoine Raymond, and he had almost 1,500 all-purpose yards rushing, receiving last year and 15 total touchdowns. He is back. So the run game should be good. You have a complement to that, but you need that pass game to be, I don't think it necessarily has to be on the same level it was last year, because it was a very good passing offense, but you need it to be competent to be able to complement your run game, right? If you don't have that passing attack, teams can key on the run better. So you need someone to step up out wide, and again, preferably KJ Duff's, I think, good enough to beat most corners one-on-one in the Big Ten, if not the whole country, but someone to take the load off of him would be nice too.
And you can make the argument last year, Rutgers might have had the best trio of wide receivers in the Big Ten. And that, I don't think was something we openly discussed to begin the year. I mean, we took notice of these guys, and Richie came on and talked with us, did an excellent episode with us to help preview, but I don't think this was a team we were overly banking on to have 3 of the best receivers or the best trio on the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. And Duff is a monster, man. I posted a question end of last week, maybe, about, we obviously, Jeremiah Smith is the number 1 receiver in the Big Ten, best receiver in the country, but who was the number 2 receiver that many people thought coming into the Big Ten? And my answer was Duff. I did not put that in the post, but got a pretty good overwhelming amount of support from Rutgers fans piping in. I believe College Football Talk Daily site, he tends to be more of a Rutgers fan, I would say. It seems he makes a lot of posts about Rutgers and be in ties with them, and he'll post that. And we got a lot of KJ Duff love, which I 100% agree with. But you had other names like DeCorian Moore, guys like that there. But Duff is a superstar. Again, I applaud him for sticking with this. I can only imagine how many NLI offers this young man probably could have gotten.
Oh, God, yep.
Now, when you are the superstar for one team and you're committed to them, he probably got a pretty damn good NIL offer from Rutgers as well, especially with Sheffield and Strong being gone. And maybe that's a part of the reason Strong is off to Cal. Good NIL offer maybe there. Maybe he has ties back there. You obviously got a new coach there with Ijejboi. But Duff's the man. That's the only thing I have to say for this Rutgers offense, and I'm so stoked to see someone this awesome be with Rutgers again this year. And we felt like we had that with Manungai, and now you're getting a super duo here in the pass and run game with Duff and Sheffield. So I'm really excited. Again, quarterback play. I said Sheffield. Jesus, Raymond. You have to get the QB thing right though, or it's not going to work at all. You're going to have to rely a lot on your defense in 2026.
I'm curious to see how close Duff can get to Kenny Britt's 2008 season. 87 catches, 1,371 yards, and 7 touchdowns.
I think it's possible. If they're trailing a bunch, you're going to have to throw a lot. So
that's true. That is true.
There's a lot of opportunity for the ball.
Well, Clinton, that's a fantastic transition to talking about the defense, because despite having an improved offense last year, Rutgers was 5-7. They missed a bowl game for the first time since 2022. I say that like they missed a bowl game for the first time in 3 seasons. There was an easier way to say that. The defense was more or less the cause for that. Just some numbers to put it in perspective. They were 127th in total defense last year, 117th in total defense. They were dead last, 136 nationally, allowing 7.6 yards per play. Clinton, there were only 2 other teams in the country who allowed greater than 7 yards per play. Sam Houston allowed 7 flat, Air Force allowed 7.2, and they were full yard per play worse than the next closest P4 team, which was Purdue at 6.6. That is how bad they were, Clinton. A yard per play worse than the next closest P4 team. They allowed 6.8 yards per rush last year, which, again, was the worst in the country. It was 1.1 yards more than the team that was next closest to them. Again, the team that was next closest to them had a rushing defense that was allowing 1.1 fewer yards per carry. That is insane, Clinton. They only got 11 sacks on the season. They forced only 11 turnovers on the season. It is not a stretch to say that this defensive unit was catastrophically bad last year. And if they were just bad, they probably make a bowl game. If they were mediocre, they might have won 8 games last year. So you say it can't get any worse. And that's, I feel like, always a foolish thing to say because it can always get worse. You could be dead. But I don't know that this defense can be any worse. They went about rebuilding the defense in the portal again, and they could have upwards of 7 transfers in the starting lineup on opening night. The issue for a program like Rutgers is a lot of the guys you are bringing in are coming from the G6 or FCS level, and you're putting a lot on their plate, asking them to come into a Big Ten where the Rutgers schedule this year, Clinton, really isn't that bad, all things considered, but you still have USC, Indiana, Michigan, and Penn State on there in league play. And this is a conversation we've had a couple of teams last year. When you're at the level of Rutgers, all of these games are toss-up games. That's not me saying that they're going to win the rest of their games, but other than those games, the schedule is pretty manageable, all things considered. The headliners of this transfer class on the defensive line, they brought in Toledo edge Malachi Davis and Tulsa edge Jadon Burnett. Davis had 5.5 sacks last year, Burnett 6.5. So a good bit of pass rushing acumen there. The issue is we thought that they brought in some pass rushing acumen for 2025 with Bradley Weaver and Eric O'Neill, and those were massive whiffs on the defensive edge position. So I think healthy skepticism is going to be the name of the game here, but at least they brought in new blood at the position. They also bring in defensive tackle Rondo Porter from App State. Read on him is a pretty good run stopper, but not a lot in terms of a pass rush. But he's also not a particularly huge human, relatively speaking. He's listed at 6 foot, 295 pounds. How that translates to the big maulers in Big Ten offensive line country will be interesting to see. Bigger rework was done in the secondary. They brought in 4 transfers. They brought in cornerbacks Kevin Humes from Maryland, Zamir DeWood from Villanova, Bradley Jones from the Citadel, and Mikey Munn from South Dakota. A couple interesting names here. Munn is interesting. One, he is a white cornerback, which is always fun to see. Exciting whites. But he had an FCS high. Yeah, Cooper DeJean is not a safety. FCS high 5 interceptions last year for Munn with South Dakota. He also had 10 pass breakups and 3 tackles for a loss. At 6'1", 190, he is pretty good size for a cornerback. And if he can translate to the speed of the Big Ten, I think he has the ball skills and the ball tracking ability to be successful in this conference. Again, how he adjusts to that speed will be a question. Then DeWood is the other kind of interesting piece that I had noted. We'll talk about all 4 of them, but he was a key player on Villanova's run in the FCS playoffs. He had 2 interceptions and 11 pass breakups last year. He's not quite as big as Munn, but another guy with good ball skills, and if he can translate that to a higher level, that could be a potentially nice cornerback duo. I've seen Humes has possibly been projected at the nickel position. He was more of a reserve role for Maryland last year. Jones had 9 breakups, but no interceptions with the Citadel. He had 8 pass breakups in 2024. He has good size at 6'1", but he's a little bit more slender at 175, which, again, if we're talking about a conference that enjoys physicality, enjoys running the ball more, that might be a little bit of a tougher play with a guy in run support. But regardless of how the back end shakes out positionally here, they're putting a lot of faith in FCS guys making the jump to improve on a pass defense that was 76th last year. It was not quite as bad as the rest of the defense was, but not a lot of new blood here on this defense, which on the one hand is good. That provides excitement. But on the other hand, you are once again putting a lot of faith in guys coming up from the G6 and FCS level and asking them to be contributors for you. And if you don't get your evals right on that, it's going to look kind of like it did last year for the Rutgers defense, man. So I'm curious if any Rutgers fans end up listening to this, if they want to chime in and let us know what their thoughts are on the new additions. But me personally, I think there's stuff to like on the defensive side of the ball here, but I'm not sure that how in I am on this coaching staff's ability to talent evaluate guys from that level to bring them up, considering how last year went. And granted, it's a little different on offense, right? Like Sheffield came from North Texas and he had a fantastic year at the receiver position. They did a really good job with Kaliakmanis. And granted, he was a Big Ten quarterback, but he didn't look great at Minnesota, and they did really good work with him over 2 years. So they've shown that they can hit on transfers, but now they got to show that they can do it on the defensive side of the ball, or this could be another missing a bowl season for Rutgers.
Shiano's a great coach. He has proven that over his career, especially with Rutgers. But he's a defensive guy, so you almost got to take that. He's got to take that personal, right? That this defense has not been what he would like it to be, and relying on potentially 7 transfers to be in your starting defensive lineup opening night. That's a big ask. Sometimes we talked about live by the portal, die by the portal, and it feels like they're living on it. Same way we talked about with Purdue. They're both living in the portal here to try to have some success on the whole entire team, but specifically their defense and needing improvement. And the one that stands out to me is you talked about Rondo Porter being App State, great at run stopping. Yeah, they're in the Sun Belt, right? Yeah, Sun Belt.
Yep.
And it's 6 foot 295. That could go real bad. You see the guys hit the sleds in practice. That could be what that is with him. Now, on the other chance, though, he pulls like a Geno Atkins. And if you remember the name Geno Atkins, he was a defensive tackle for the Cincinnati Bengals. He was a bit undersized, but he made a living because he was strong at the point of attack and he could use his speed against some of the bigger guys, and he made a hell of a living in the NFL. So I'm not saying Rondo Porter is Geno Atkins. Maybe he is. I don't know. But not necessarily is his size a true disadvantage if he knows how to utilize it, or the Shiano and the defensive staff can utilize it. I love, you talked about bringing in Munn from the Villanova run last year, right? Did I say that? Did I get the right guy? No, I'm sorry, DeWad.
Yep.
So bringing in guys who've had success at a lesser level, that's very much a la the Kurt Cignetti route, right?
Yep.
And I feel like we've seen a fair amount of teams trying to replicate this year. So you bring in a guy who's had success, smaller level, and you bring him up and let's see what he can do. And, you can bring in all the players you want, but you have to have the staff who puts them in the right position and knows how to utilize their talent in the best way possible for them to be successful. And we've mentioned this before, trying to perfectly replicate the Kurt Cignetti formula may not be for everyone.
No, and it helps when your starting point with that is bringing 7 all-conference players from your team that went 12-1.
Absolutely.
And dominated the, what are they, Sun Belt? JMU?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So it's tough. It's tough, right? Like, you have a personal relationship with those players. You've had eyes on them throughout. Like, I remember talking about this our first season because they went out and got Curtis Rourke at quarterback instead of bringing, I don't think it was Barnett who was their quarterback in 23 when he was there. Was it?
I don't remember.
But I don't remember if he was the conference player of the year. He had a really good year, and Cignetti did not bring him. People are like, well, that's a little weird. Why is he bringing the Ohio quarterback in? You have eyes on those guys. You have a sense of whether or not that they have the attitude or the physical capacity to translate their play to the next level. And when you're scouting guys just via film, there's a lot of projection that goes to it that you don't have, or that Cignetti, I'm not sure what I'm trying to fucking say here. You know what I mean, right? Like, having your eyes on these guys and being around these guys is one thing. Trying to figure out who's going to translate to the next level just by watching tape, you can't always figure that out. So it's a little bit more of a crapshoot, and we've seen it burn some teams, a la Florida State, pretty bad the last couple of years. So I don't know, man. I think this is a pivotal year for Greg Schiano, and I think, depending on how it goes, I think it's going to be pretty informative for us on how serious Rutgers is about football, because this is a guy who, being back here since 2020, he's been into a bowl game 3 of 6 years, and this is following, I think, 5 of his last 6 years, 6 of his last 7 years. When he was at Rutgers' first stint, they went to a bowl game then. So not having quite that same level of success, they've been, in a bowl game the last 2 years, 1-1 in those bowl games, over 500, but they still don't have a winning record in Big Ten play since he has been back, starting in the 2020 season. If they miss a bowl game this year, does heat start to get turned up on him? Do they make a coaching change? We've heard so many times that, well, Greg Schiano's the only guy who can win at Rutgers. I don't know that that's necessarily true in this era of college football anymore. You need a great coach. There's no doubt about that. But you need support financially for that program because you can have a great coach. And why did Indiana take a step forward last year, Clinton? Is because they figured that they had a great coach and they said, this is our opportunity to take our football program to the next level. And we are going to dump money. We're going to invest money into this and have faith that we are going to make more of it on the back end because the product is going to warrant that. And it paid off for them. And you can't be cheap in college football in a conference like the Big Ten anymore and expect that it's going to go well for you because everyone else is outspending you. And money talks in this day and age of college football. And I'm not just talking about roster building, but assistant coach pools, how you're getting your analysts, how you're funding the day-to-day operation of your program, what kind of money you're putting into scouting. It all shows up in the product on the field. And this is, again, I don't know the financial investment that Rutgers is making, but if this is a long-winded way of saying if they don't meet what their internal expectations are for the year, are they going to talk about making a change on the coaching staff, or are they just going to sit there and say, well, we're paying this guy $6.5 million. We don't want to use that as a sunk cost. We're just going to kind of keep him and see what happens.
Yep. Sometimes it's the old adage, you get what you pay for. So we'll see.
Will be interesting to see. Two interesting teams to watch again this year. We're interested in all of these teams. Will be fun to watch. I'm just excited to watch KJ Duff this year. So really fascinated to see how this quarterback battle shapes up. Hopefully it is a guy who can get him the ball 90 times this
100%,
year.
100%.
We'll be back on
Blitnikoff.
Yeah, for sure. We'll be back Thursday night, 8:30, 9-ish this week for our last show of the week. It is a Victory Bell show, USC and UCLA. Clinton made me talk about USC, so I'm going to find something nice to say about them.
Do you want to swap?
No, it's okay.
Okay. Because I took UCLA, no offense UCLA fans, but then I took Washington, and you got USC, who's perceived better team, and then you got Wisconsin.
I do. There's a lot. These are two good ones to talk about because there's a lot of questions with both those teams. But we got one more this week. How we're going to kind of break down episodes next week because I have hockey on Monday and Tuesday is Wednesday. We will probably do just Notre Dame since it's only a one for, and then Thursday will be just our regular show where we'll do Washington and Wisconsin. Sound about right?
Oh, that's fine. Sorry. Yeah, for some reason we had two more. I'm so tired.
All right. We'll go to sleep, Clinton. Thank you, everyone, for listening to us once again as we hit the home stretch of our Spring Spotlight series. We'll see you guys on Thursday.
Deuces.